I can do this, and then we'll have half an hour for the other stuff, which we can do easily. So this is the last topic, and keep in mind, I'm leaving a lot of stuff out. We spent a lot of time on joint classification. There's maybe 2 or 3 questions at most, and truth is, we already did them by doing the topics already, but I'll recap it. And so just know the functional classification, just know the 3 names definitions. Synarthrosis means non-movable. Just know the definition. Synarthrosis means non-movable. Amphiarthrosis means slightly movable. And diarthrosis means freely movable. I'll correlate it with the other 3, but really you just need to know the 3 definitions. Synarthrosis, non-movable joints. Amphiarthrosis means slightly movable, and diarthrosis means freely movable. Okay, now fibrous, now we do this 3 structural classifications, which are more specific and have subcategories, are fibrous joints, where there's fibrous tissue holding the bones together. Cartilaginous joints have cartilage tissue holding the bones together, and synovial joints, the bones are not held together where they meet, but are held together by a joint capsule, which I forgot to bring, but I think you know that. They're free to move, that's why they're freely movable. They're not held together by fibrous or cartilage. They have a joint capsule stabilizing them away from the free surfaces. Okay, so under fibrous, there's 2, forget about gomphosis, not on the test. Just, it's all S categories. They're all S words. So under fibrous, the 2 subcategories are suture and syndesmosis. The 2 subcategories are suture and syndesmosis. If there's a little bit of fibrous tissue limiting movement, it's suture. Only found in the skull, there's synarthrosis. So if there's just a tiny bit of fibrous tissue, it's a suture joint. But the nice thing about suture joints, they're only found in the skull, and all skull joints are sutures except the TMJs. So that's very localized, very easy to remember. The sutures only in skull, they're all synarthrosis, non-movable. All suture joints are found in the skull, and they're all synarthrosis, no exception. Now, syndesmosis is fibrous with more fibrous tissue in the form of a ligament. And the only one that there might be more, but test-wise there's only one. You just need to know, the syndesmosis joint you need to know is distal tibiofibular. The only syndesmosis joint you need to know is the distal tibiofibular. It's syndesmosis, and this won't be in the question, but it's a lot more fibrous tissue in the form of a large ligament. That's why it moves a little bit. Technically it's amphiarthrosis, but I shouldn't. It's not. We don't ask that. So syndesmosis is when you have a ligament that's fibrous tissue, much more tissue connecting the bones, and the only example of syndesmosis is the distal tibiofibular joint. That's the only example you need to know, distal tibiofibular, nothing else. Now, cartilaginous is based not on how much, but the type of cartilage connecting the bones. So if it's hyaline connecting, as all costal rib cartilage is hyaline, but the only joint that's still recognized as a real synchondrosis is between rib 1 or R1 and sternum. They're the only synchondroses recognized in the adult body. So I'll leave it like that. I don't want to go into any detail on that because it's very confusing, and it's also totally confusing. But the bottom line is the only synchondroses you need to know are between rib 1 and sternum. That's hyaline cartilage. When hyaline cartilage connects the 2 bones, it's synchondrosis. That's the only ones between rib 1 and first costal notch of sternum. That's the only synchondrosis. Symphysis is when you have a disc of the stronger fibrocartilage. It's always in the form of a disc. So when there's fibrocartilage between the bones connecting them, it's called symphysis. And there's one singular category, pubic symphysis, but on the test, they might say, where do you find symphysis? And they'll have A, between two hip bones anteriorly, B, all anterior intervertebral joints, C, between rib 1 and sternum, and then D, all of the above, E, A, and B. The question was, where do you have symphysis joints? So A was between two hip bones anteriorly, B was all anterior intervertebral joints, C was between R1, rib 1 and sternum, D was all of them, but E was A and B only. It's A and B. Everyone got that? Between two hip bones anteriorly, they're not going to say, where do you have symphysis, and say pubic symphysis. They'll say, between two hip bones anteriorly. So that's a symphysis. And then all anterior intervertebral joints between adjacent bodies have a disc of fibrocartilage, making them all symphysis. So that was like A and B. But if I have the same choices that I just had, and I say, which of the following are cartilaginous joints? And I have between two hip bones anteriorly, between bodies of all vertebra, and then C was between rib 1 and sternum. Now I'm asking more general, which are cartilaginous? D, all of them, E, A, and B. What would the answer to this be?
D, all of the above.
Yeah, if we say cartilaginous, that's all inclusive. This is cartilaginous, synchondrosis, but it's cartilaginous. So there's only two possible questions with that. And you're always going to get one or the other. If they say symphysis, the answer is between two hip bones and all anterior intervertebral. Those are the only two places. Symphysis, one singular, the other many. But if they say cartilaginous joints, there's only three types, three locations. One is a synchondrosis, cartilaginous hyaline between rib 1 and sternum. So that counts as cartilaginous. This is symphysis cartilaginous, and this is symphysis. So it would be all of them. If they start cartilaginous, it's all three. If they say symphysis, it was A and B only. Those are the two potential questions. Okay, and that takes care of everything except synovial joints, which I'll do right now. Now, I don't think I need to draw the big picture, but when a synovial joint